This week, we're in the township of Langley, where people truly are connected with their food. The township of Langley, not to be confused with the neighboring city of Langley, is a community of communities in the Fraser Valley to the east of Vancouver, stretching from Surrey to Abbotsford. It's a mix of growing suburbs and fertile agricultural land, and is home to the birthplace of British Columbia, Fort Langley, where I'm starting my visit at the reconstructed Fort Langley Historical Site to learn about life for the first European settlers here.
Fort Langley was established here in 1827. The Hudson's Bay Company was looking to establish a fort to trade with the local First Nations peoples, and they chose this spot on the river. When it first started, you had about 25 men that were working for the Hudson's Bay Company that came to this area. The Hudson's Bay Company was only looking to hire single men, so it was kind of a little one-sided in that aspect. But once they were able to forge good relationships with the First Nations peoples, that's when you saw the numbers within the fort to expand to some extent. At its height, there was probably about 100 people living within the walls of the fort.
When they arrived here, how different would it have been to where they had come from a farming and an agricultural perspective?
Well, for most folks, it would have been probably quite different. They depended a lot on young shoots, for example, in the springs, wapatau and camas bulb, which were both kind of starchy. What I would say is if you were a worker that had come from somewhere else in the world, starting off with some of those local foods, you would have had quite a bit of a tummy ache until your stomach adjusted to that. But by the same fashion with bringing lots of potato seed, you also saw the First Nations in this area planting a lot of potatoes. And at one point in our history, we had about a mile-long potato patch just on the far side of the fort that the Hudson's Bay Company also hired First Nations workers to help with. So again, a lot of kind of mix of knowledge there, and you using the land and what the land is willing to give. A lot of times we mentioned that there's no way the Hudson's Bay Company men could have survived without the knowledge of the women when it came to local plants. It was really those gifts in trade that allowed the Hudson's Bay Company to survive their first winter here.
Unlike today, where we take travel for granted, those first settlers were truly isolated.
You were a 6 to 8 month journey by boat away from that location, and that ship was only coming once a year.
You didn't skip the dishes? Wasn't around at that point in time?
No, not at that time. How convenient would that have been, right? But what I would say to that is that that food security became a huge part of our story here, and that's again why Fort Langley was successful, is because they were also looking to obtain self-sufficiency. And at one point, our produce and all of the livestock that they kept here was enough to also help keep coastal and interior forts and posts well stocked with food and things like that as well. So it really was key to be able to get that self-sufficiency here. That was a huge part.
When the Hudson's Bay Company first established Fort Langley, one of the most vital things to secure was the food supply, though it would not have been a very diverse diet.
The most prevalent food here would have been the salmon, and of course once the Hudson's Bay Company got started with it, lots of potatoes. So most of your meals here would have been salmon and potatoes. But that being said, you did see later on in our history, once we had that large farm established, there was actually a role here called the chief steward. And they would have a residence attached to this cookhouse. They would use the kind of in-house grocery, if you will, our small garden over there, and they would do all the food preparations for the 2 managers that lived here at the fort. But aside from that, you had the chief steward doing a weekly bread bake.
So Emily, what's your favorite part of this? Do you have a favorite dish or a favorite preparation that you like to do?
Honestly, I think the fresh baked bread is my absolute favorite. It's fun to make. People come out, they get to watch it just rising. They can see what you're doing. And the smell of it when it comes out of the oven is amazing.
The bread is made to a traditional recipe and baked in this authentic oven. As the fort grew, so did the quality and the variety of food.
Beans and peas were a huge part of what they were able to produce in the large 2,000-acre farm, as well as wheat, oats, barley. Those helped with a lot of the feed for the cattle in the area as well. And then we were also able to do things like fresh beets as well. A lot of root vegetables were really successful here too. And then the meat that's available in the area too.
At its peak, the fort's farm was able to raise sheep, cattle and pigs, and with the gold rush, it became an important and busy trading place.
The same year that the gold rush happened, the same year we became a colony here at Fort Langley. This is how we've designed the fort for people to step in.
And I'm just, as you talk about that, I'm just imagining the river at the bottom of the hill there. It's almost like the 1800s version of a drive-through Costco kind of thing, isn't it?
You've hit the nail on the head.
They could stop, pull over, get all their supplies, and carry on up the river.
Exactly. There would also have been a long dock going all the way out to the riverfront, and a lot of trade happened, as you said, right on that dock or out of a trade window here at the fort. And then later on, once
trade window, so literally a drive-through.
Yes, yeah, a canoe through. Yeah. And then there were also lots of smaller shacks further up the Fraser where you could trade for items as well too.
Right. So
and
those are little independents.
Exactly. The little convenience store along the way, before you get to the larger supermarket, if you will. Would you like to try some of our baked beans?
You have some baked beans ready?
We do.
Let's
get you some there.
I have to say, I'm a bit of a connoisseur of baked beans. I like baked beans.
These ones were baked overnight in our oven. So historically, you heat it up to the highest temperature you need, and you make a list of what you need to cook as it cools down. You use all the temperatures. And then they actually just went in a ceramic bean pot. You leave it in overnight, and it's like a slow cooker.
Right.
And when you open it up in the morning, you have lunch.
To make it a full meal, all it needs is some freshly baked bread and some homemade butter.
So we cheat a little bit here since we don't have any dairy cows.
Yeah.
We just get whipping cream.
Yep.
You pour whipping cream into a jar very much like this. I add maybe that much to it.
Yeah.
Put the lid on, you shake it up.
Yeah.
Keep shaking, you get to whipping cream.
Yep.
Keep going a little bit more, and there's a very fine line where it goes from whipping cream, all of a sudden you hear sloshing around, and you have buttermilk and a chunk of butter in there.
Yeah.
And then we dump it out. We use a fork or something like that just to knead it out, and you get all the extra buttermilk out.
Yep.
Add a little bit of salt. Good to go.
Butter ready to go. Okay, so let's have, this bread just feels beautiful. It's soft, but it's got a density to it. It's almost like a scone. Beautiful. I'm going to try some bread first, because I have to say, carbs are my weakness. That is delicious. Okay, we're going for the beans.
This is my personal favorite.
I could survive on that. I could imagine surviving a cold winter on bread and beans quite easily.
Definitely.
Fortunately, they didn't have to survive entirely on bread and beans. Long before the fort was built, the local First Nations lived and thrived here, and without their knowledge and help, the new arrivals would probably not have survived. Down at the cooperage, amongst the barrels, I met with Hazel from the Kwantlen First Nation.
We were a huge nation, Kwantlen. In fact, you're on unceded territory of Kwantlen.
Okay.
And our livelihood was for food, and that was fishing.
Right.
And this is one of the most important things for all of our people.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
To get them through the year, preserving the fish was vital.
We salted our fish because we didn't have any refrigeration.
Right.
That was, in fact, as a child, that's what I lived on.
Okay.
And I lived on a lot of the smoked salmon,
Right, yeah.
sun-dried salmon, and we used a lot of fish, and we even used the oils.
So what other kinds of things besides salmon, what other kinds of foodstuffs would be common?
We would go pick the cranberries, blueberries, choke cherries, and crab apples, because this was our pectin for Mum when she was canning, and we used a lot of the...
And again, part of that preservation process.
Right.
Yeah. So Hazel, how long would a barrel of salmon like this, how long would that last?
2 years. My mom always had it on the crock, and my grandparents. But they didn't just have salmon on the salt. It was also our moose, our deer, because we were all hunters, my dad. And it went in there.
Right. As we've just learned, the town of Fort Langley is on the traditional territory of the Kwantlen First Nation. My next stop is the Riverside Lelam Cafe to meet manager Rocky Nenka.
Lelam is owned by Kwantlen First Nation through the Sam Kwantlen Business Development Group, one of many of the operating companies that we have. Right. We have the Lelam Arts and Cultural Cafe here. We have the Lelam Cafe at the Fort Langley National Historic Site. And we also have a small chain, a growing but small chain of express locations that focuses on coffee and grab-and-go foods.
That's fantastic.
We like to think that we're the original farm to table. If you look at what we do here, This is our supermarket. Everything here. We've got the stave to the north, which we traditionally hunted for elk and venison. We've got obviously the Fraser River, which is teeming full of salmon. Stories tell that before colonization, the river was so full of salmon that you could walk across the backs of it.
I've heard that.
And our salmon, obviously, when the fort was opened in 1827, salmon traded as far north as Alaska, all the way down to Peru and as far away as Australia. And then cranberries as well was a big part of this area as well. The local First Nation people also supplied the fort with cranberries, which were traded all over the world as well.
Inside, the cafe is filled with traditional art and artifacts, including the table we're sitting at.
This piece, I have to say, is probably the most intriguing. I presume all this is local.
They are. They're all found just north to us here in the Stave Valley and one of the oldest archaeological sites in Canada.
Wow.
We try to use as many local indigenous ingredients as possible.
Right.
And we're always looking for unique items that fit within the culture, but also fit within our local market here that we get locally as well.
Right. How are people embracing that?
Really, when we look at the food that we do, it's very simple food. It's healthy food, it's simple, it's easy to prepare, and easy to replicate, I think, too. It's stuff that we really pride ourselves on, knowing that it's also nutritious. One of the teachings that we have from our elders, though, is that when we're preparing food, we also put our good thoughts and our good love and our intentions into it, and that's truly the nourishment that you get out of the food when you eat it.
Right.
The cafe is part of a broader strategy for the future.
We want to be very active in our community. We also want to create good jobs. And I think that's one of the things that we really pride ourselves on, is that we've been able to provide fantastic jobs for many people. It does start from the top. We are governed by a council of elders. So our elders do once a month meet to guide our decisions. We find that that's that community focus that keeps everyone in the loop.
The cafe specializes in breakfast, and they have brought out one fantastic selection.
Well, first up, we have our bannock breakfast sandwich. It's a savory baked bannock biscuit with bacon, egg, sharp cheddar cheese. Next up, we have our smoked salmon breakfast bannock Benny. Again, we use a savory bannock, a herb savory bannock that we bake in-house. A turkey sandwich with local cranberry sourdough bread. And this is our cedar basil artichoke sandwich. And what we do is we roast artichokes in a cedar jelly marinade that we make. So it gives it a really nice sweet flavor, but you can get a little bit of the cedar in it. And then that's all roasted and tossed together and served with some goat cheese and fresh vegetables on there.
That's going to be my first taste, because that's the unique one. I mean, all this is lovely and wonderful, but that one is roasted artichokes. I don't think I've ever had roasted artichokes. It doesn't happen very often, but I'm speechless.
Wow. Okay.
That takes artichokes. I like artichokes, but I've always found them kind of, mundane. But that just escalates them into something quite
Can
spectacular.
be bland. We find that with the cedar and then roasting them, just gives it that unique flavor profile that I don't think you can find anywhere else.
This is without a doubt one of the best breakfasts I think I've ever had the opportunity
Thank you so much.
to share.
Berries have long been an important crop in this area, as we've heard, and it's great to know that if you live anywhere near here, you can pick your own fresh berries at farms like this. I'm visiting Kraus Berry Farms.
How many different varieties of berries, or what sorts of berries can people get when they come to Kraus Farms?
We grow 4 main berries on the farm, starting with strawberries every June.
Okay.
That's probably our busiest, most intense time of the year. It's a blink and you miss it thing for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then our raspberries come kind of beginning of July, followed by blueberries right around the middle of the month. And then we have in August our blackberries. Those are kind of our tail end.
And did I even see goji berries as well?
Goji berries as well. We do
Little small amount?
We do have a number of specialty berries, I guess you could call them, smaller crops. Some goji, some what are called tay berries, a cross between a raspberry and a
They're kind
blackberry.
of long and
yeah,
fat, aren't they?
yeah,
They're delicious.
yeah.
How long's the farm been here?
Yeah, well over 40 years now. I think we started out in 1974 selling berries out of VW Bug, believe it or not.
Good old VW Bugs. There you go. They get
VW
everywhere.
Bug, yeah.
Yeah.
Quickly expanded to a shack and then a market, and before you know it, nowadays we have our market and winery and 10 other odd things.
Still in the same family?
Yeah, still in the Kraus family.
That's fantastic.
Today, a visit can be a full day out for the whole family. And if you just want to enjoy the berries without the picking, they sell a huge variety of berry products, all made here in their busy kitchen. But I'm here with Pauline Schroeder in the bake shop. This is quite an operation you've got going on here, isn't it? This is
Oh yes, it's a great place because we get to make all these quality products out of the great fruit that we grow right in our fields here. So it could be picked that morning and end up on your pie that afternoon.
that is, and
Yeah.
I'm just looking at this process. So please put me to work. What are we doing? I mean, these are obviously fruit pies.
Yeah, so this is called our famous berry custard pie.
Okay.
And so what we do is we work with the fruits we have in season. So in June when we start with the strawberries, they're all strawberry, and
Okay.
then gradually we get to make them with 3 or 4 different fruits on them. And
So
that's,
these are always changing depending on what's at its peak.
Yes.
That
yes.
is
So
absolutely fantastic.
If you want me to put you to work, we'll grab
Sure.
these wonderful strawberries here, and you
Okay.
can start to build a wall with the
Okay,
berries
so
around
I'm
the
going
edge
to
of
do
the pie.
something
You're gonna
along
do
these
like
lines
that.
here. I'm
Yes,
just going
you
to
are.
put that just over to the
Yeah,
side
so
and
there
just
you
press
go.
them
Yeah.
in.
So then to give the people a few more berries, you'll just put some on the bottom here. Our basic rule is you put them on until they start falling off. And then
I
you
like
stop.
that
Yeah,
rule.
yeah. Okay, now you get to put some raspberries on there.
Oh, so we're not done yet. I thought I was.
you're
I
not
thought
done.
I was
No,
done.
that's
Okay,
not big
so
enough. Somebody got that pie, they bring it back. Yeah. So, there you
we're
go.
just going to try and get them
Yeah,
set.
see, now they start falling off.
So that's got enough fruit on it now, and your
Almost,
standard.
Almost.
Oh, we're still going to go a little bit
Yeah,
higher.
a little bit higher. There you go.
Look at that.
So
that
now-
is a fruit pie.
And now you get to glaze it. This is
this-
a strawberry
This
glaze.
is a strawberry glaze.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you'll make it look nice with that spatula.
And then
you
I love
got
I love my spatulas.
There you
Spatulas,
go.
and then we're just
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
sort of glue it all together.
Yes.
That I think has got to be the absolutely berriest pie I have ever held in my hand. That there must be 3 or 4 pounds of berries in there.
Yes,
Easily.
there actually is.
Easily.
And so it's great that they've been grown here on the farm, and it's been fun making them and working here and making products that are fresh, local, and then working with students from the community. Many of them are able to ride their bikes here, and some have worked from the age of 14 to now they're in college, and they still come and spend their summers working here. And the family community here is a great, strong feeling, and it's family owned. The owners are very involved, they're hands-on,
Right.
and they're great to work for.
You pick berries are great, but today I'm visiting something a little different. Silverbrook You Catch Trout, run by Dan Hay. Hello there. You
Hi,
must be
Steve.
Dan. We're the most famous trout in the valley, I hear.
Yes, we are. You come to do some fishing today?
Absolutely, absolutely. Dan finds me a fishing rod, which is as simple as I've ever seen, and shows me to my fishing spot. All right then, Dan.
Yes.
So here we are. What do we do next?
Well,
I
let's
know
get-
I've fished before, but obviously I've done trout fishing from a boat, but never in a pond.
Well, I'll get some bait on your hook and we'll cast it in. And
Okay.
We'll see how that works. If you could just pass me the pole.
Okay. So it's a little bit of a little three-pronged hook there.
Yeah, we have no regulations here.
Okay.
And
So
this
what is
bait-
that? What is the bait?
It's ground up fish food, flour, and water. So it's the same stuff they eat.
Oh, okay. So you're just sort of mashing it onto the mashing it onto the bottom of the hook.
Yeah. So now you'll need to just unwind that gently.
So now when the whole thing unwound off the.
Yeah.
Okay.
So these are rainbow trout that we have stocked here.
So I'm just trying to get it out into the middle there. Is that all I'm?
Yeah,
Something like that.
perfect. Yes.
So
So you watch your float
okay.
and
And
once you-
presumably
see?
it'll
yeah,
get
it's
a little
jigging a
tug
little
on?
bit. They're biting at it. You see the little ripples around it?
Okay. Okay.
That's when they're biting.
So Dan, how long has the trout farm been here?
Well, my parents first started this farm in the early 70s.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah,
so
they-
you're talking 40 plus years.
Yeah.
So they built it purposefully to be a trout farm.
Actually, it was the only way. Oh, there we go.
Look at that.
Okay.
Look at that. Oh. Wow, look at him. That's fantastic. What a beauty. That has to be a record time for catching a fish. And it's a beauty. Best of all, I get to take it home and cook it. Now this is a you fish practice here. So people are going to come
and do exactly what I've done.
Yes. Not as quick.
Okay.
You're pretty good.
That's
You're
good
a
to
pro.
hear. That's awesome. Awesome.
This is a fish farm, so each of the ponds is stocked with fish of a different size. And there are a lot of them.
How many fish in total are on the property, would you
Oh.
imagine?
Okay, right now on the whole property, pond 1 probably has about 10,000. This has 3. That's probably
10,000 in that little one up there?
Yeah, but they're only like 6
Okay,
to 8
okay.
inches long.
Right.
Yeah, and that's our next year's stock. That will be
Okay.
coming down, and they'll be at this size when they're in that pond.
Right. Okay.
Fish farming has really gotten a bad rap, and you know, farming fish is probably one of the more sustainable ways of going.
Yeah.
It's all controlled,
Yeah.
and we don't add any extra additives to their diet.
Right.
They don't have any vaccines or
Growth hormones or
Yeah,
any of that kind of thing. in them.
right. I mean, it's clean.
Yeah.
Because these fish are easy to catch, this is a great introduction to fishing.
There have been so many fish caught here by first-time people, children that say, I was here 15 years ago, and now they're bringing their children, generation after generation have come here.
Yeah, yeah. And well, you saw the look on my face, and I can imagine, I can think it was a long, long time ago when I caught my very first fish, but I remember the joy that that brought. Seeing that fish come out of the water and that excitement of seeing something. And then of course, you know, the reality is they're for food primarily, and they're gonna taste delicious, aren't they?
Oh yeah.
For more great recipes, ask for the Flavors of the West Coast cookbook in your local bookstore